Welcome back, all of you gangsters, to the Girls Ask Guys show. This is the place where all of us try to figure out flirting, dating, relationships, breakups, and everything else that life throws at us. I'm one of your hosts, John.
And I'm the other one, Ashley.
And we are back with the Girls Ask Guys show. And our topic today is going to be slightly controversial. We are talking about the death penalty. And this question is, with death penalty canceled in some countries, will life sentences be seen as too harsh in the next couple of years? He goes on to explain, Amber Geiger's case inspired me to ask this, since she murdered a man in his house after intrusion. And according to some sources, according to Texas law, she'll be given a maximum of 20 years in prison. Now, I'm not sure if that information is correct or if it is true that she has been given life in prison. Hypothesize for me here. Could we be heading towards a world which sympathizes with murderers because they're now special snowflakes who deserve second or even third chances?
So we've always been a society who sympathizes with murderers. I just like to point that out. We've never, you can think of very many famous murder cases. There's always some sympathizers. So it's not necessarily are we going to become a society that sympathizes with murderers like we already are, like I said. Also, no, life sentences won't seem too harsh. They never seem too harsh. I've never heard someone kill 4 people and someone say, you know what, 233 years of prison, that seems a bit much.
I mean, I'm looking at one of the most famous cases that there are, the Ted Bundy case.
Oh, yeah.
He got the death penalty.
People love Ted.
But if you watch the court case or even the documentary, and I'm not talking about the movie type, I'm talking the actual documentary, he had followers. He had a huge fan base.
And they thought he was good looking, and they were like sexually into him.
Well, even the judge said, if you had chosen a different path, I would have loved to have you in my courtroom. I mean, the judge sympathized with him. Yeah. And that was right before he handed down the verdict that he's got the death penalty.
Which he kind of deserved the death penalty. I'm not going to lie to anybody. And by kind of, I mean absolutely. I think in Ted Bundy's case, the death penalty is the only... Like, wait, what are you going to do? Keep him in jail? You're going to keep him in jail? He's going to kill someone there, too.
I mean, he actually got married.
Yeah.
Actually, he pulled that stunt in the courtroom with an old Florida law. If he asked and they accepted in front of a judge, it was a legal marriage. So it was a courtroom stunt. But yeah, I mean, he actually had conjugal visits while in prison, and she actually had I believe it was a daughter after that. But as far as sympathizing with murderers, I wouldn't so much say sympathize, because sympathy is something completely different. I mean, there are sympathizers, but there's also empathy.
Yeah.
I can empathize with certain people on certain things, but I'm not going to sympathize with them, because once I start sympathizing with them, then I'm actually stepping in their shoes 100%, other than just understanding the circumstances.
Right. I mean, Eileen Wuornos got a lot of sympathy. She was sentenced to death, too. She got a lot of sympathy because, she had a very rough life. And I think she was like a prostitute for a very, very weird amount of time. Or since a very young age. So she got a lot of sympathy. They had two movies, and not just Monster, starring Charlize Theron, but like they had 2, Eileen Warner, The Selling of a Serial Killer, and then The Making of the Serial Killer. And she got a ton of sympathy. I don't think people like John Wayne Gacy get sympathy. I think people are interested, if that makes sense.
Well, a lot of people wonder how a person can do such a heinous act.
Right.
I mean, they try to understand it.
And you can't understand it, by the way, like, just so you know. If you do understand it, you might need to be checked in somewhere.
Yeah, you probably need some professional help, especially if that is something that is like a continuous, recurring thought process. I mean, seek professional help on that. As far as people being special snowflakes and stuff like that, no, the thing about the legal process, at least here in the United States, I really don't study the legal process for Texas. I know for the area that I'm in. Texas is close, but their laws are different.
Seriously.
You still have that jury of 12, at least here in the United States. I know over in England, the entire jury process is different.
Right.
It's different, and every country has its own process. But that process is still handed down from somebody that's listening to the facts as they are presented. I think I made that point clear. The whole thing might need to come out.
No, you're good. I think, yeah. So we're just gonna, I think, just for the safety of not making ourselves sound like idiots, we're going to talk specifically about the American justice system.
Yeah, I can't even speak on the UK system. I mean, I have a general idea what it looks like, and that's just from watching movies that are made
Yeah, I have no idea.
in that country that follow the legal process. So now with this specific case, I mean, she went to a house. She thought it was
Right.
her house, and she thought that the owner of the house was an intruder, so she shot him. And with this, I would say put yourself in that situation. You're going into a place that you believe is yours, and there's a stranger there. How would you react?
Oh, yeah, I agree with that, but that doesn't change what happened in my mind.
No, it doesn't change what happened.
I don't necessarily think it's a death penalty case by any means. This isn't like a cold-blooded, premeditated, murder. I think, but there still needs to be repercussions, and that's going to teach you that, number one, if you're going into a house, let's make sure it's yours.
Yeah.
That's simple.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much how the defense set this up. The defense looked at it and they're like, how would you, the jury, react if you walked into a house that looked very similar to yours? You walk in and she shot him. Is that a death penalty type thing? In my personal opinion, no, I don't think that's death penalty. She got 20 years in prison for it. Now, I haven't really kept up with this case, so I don't know how old she is, but let's say she's in her 40s. That's 20 years. That's pretty much a death penalty right there. That's if she lives to be that old, living in that environment.
Right.
I mean, she could get there and 10 years down the road, she's got beef with another inmate, and that inmate comes at her with a shank, and she could wind up dead 10 years later.
And don't forget, she's a cop. So a cop in prison, like,
oh yeah,
okay, there's a few things in this world I never would want to be, and one of them is a cop in prison.
Oh,
like
hell
that
no.
right there is you might as well. Like, and she said it because I did watch some of the case, and I read some stuff on CNN yesterday or the day before. But when I read it, she was like, I wish he would have just shot me. Like, I wish I would never have to go through this. And part of that reason is because there's probably somebody, if not more than one person,
in that prison that she arrested
who might want to kill her.
Yeah. I mean, one, just because she is now former law enforcement, but two, who has she arrested? How long has she been on the job?
Yeah. She could get there and it's over.
She can get to that prison, and depending on how long she's been on the job, how many people has she arrested and they have ended up in prison? And lo and behold, she goes to that prison and she runs into like 5 or 6 people that she has arrested and put there herself. I mean, I would not be totally surprised if she got there and she spent her 20 years in isolation, in protective custody.
Which sucks also. I mean, this whole thing for this woman is all because she made a mistake. And that's why I'm saying it's not a death penalty case. It's not a death penalty because usually that's like cold-blooded, premeditated, like serial killer or like, cop killer or something like that. And she did none of that. She literally made the dumbest mistake of her life, killed somebody. And guess what? Now, like, I fully agree that if she wouldn't have gotten arrested, if nothing would have happened to her, there would have been some sort of citizen outroar. But now, people are saying she should have got the death penalty. She didn't mean to kill that man. She just, I hate to say it this way, she's just an idiot.
Yeah. And even if they did give her the death penalty, now the death penalty varies for every single state. Every state has its own laws on the death penalty. There's some states that say there is no death penalty. Other states say we have a death penalty, but we'll never use it. And some of them, they have a death penalty and they pretty much put you in the express lane.
Texas is one of those. 3 people saw you do it. Boop, you're going.
Yeah. We'll have you. We got a space reserved for you in room number 3, and your number will be called in 5 minutes. But I mean, with the death penalty itself, I mean, will it solve anything? Let's just this is how I look at the death penalty. One, if you pass the death penalty on somebody, it needs to be carried out as soon as possible, because you keep somebody on death row. Let's take California, for instance. They do have a death penalty, but they never exercise it. There are people been on death row for 20 years. That's an extremely long time to be sitting in a cell by yourself because you're on protective custody. So it's 23-1. You're locked down for 23 hours a day. Imagine sitting in a cell by yourself, nobody to talk to, nobody to interact with, wondering if today is the day somebody's going to come in and say, yeah, you're going to die in 3 days, 4 hours. That, to me, just putting myself in that position, thinking about that, that would drive me nuts, especially if I had to do it for 20 years.
Yeah. No, I couldn't imagine. I'm not opposed to the death penalty by any means. But I just think...
No, I'm not opposed to it.
I think if somebody is convicted to death, there needs to be, like, without a doubt. I mean, I'm talking DNA, witnesses, everything. You know, cross your I's, dot your T's. All of the jazz, it needs to be excluded. This person cannot... There's not a single reasonable doubt. And in borderline, you need a confession. That's my only issue, is that there have been people who have been sentenced to death whose convictions have been overturned, who've turned out to be wrongful convictions, and, you know, they were carried out with the death penalty and they didn't do anything.
Yeah, there was...
My problem comes down to that, in a sense.
And I agree. I mean, the last thing I want to do is put somebody in prison that didn't do anything. I mean, and I recently came across a case. Well, I wouldn't say recently, it's probably about 2 years ago. I was watching a documentary and there was a guy who was locked up in prison. He got life, and he maintained his innocence for 30 years. And finally, because of the development in DNA, they ran a DNA check, and sure enough, that was not his hair or skin or blood, whatever they did.
I would lose my shit on everybody.
I mean, he was locked up when he was 20. He got released when he was 50.
They owe him his life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, his entire life was pretty much shot. I mean, think about the skills. If you're 18 or 20 years old, think about the skills that you have today. And then look at somebody who is 50 and look at how much knowledge and how many skills and the things they have done with their life. He got none of that.
None of it. He was robbed of his entire life.
Entire life.
Probably wrote him a semi-decent check and was like, we're sorry, we fucked you over. You know, meanwhile, this guy's told you he's innocent. He's maintained his innocence. He was not lying. And
the warden apologized to him.
Apologize? Would lose my shit.
Well, I mean, what else is the warden?
I don't know.
What else is the warden going to do?
Honestly, I think I'd end up back in jail because, like, what the fuck else am I going to do?
Yeah, I mean, he came down and he was a model inmate. That's the only reason that the warden knew him. Because, I mean, thank goodness that prison had a decent warden that actually came down and actually talked to the inmates that he was watching over. Because really, I mean, if I was ever to get locked up in prison, that would be what I want. I'd want the warden to actually listen to what my complaints are, because it's already a harsh environment. Just the people that you are locked up with makes it a harsh environment to begin with. And then you have all the restrictions on top of that. But if the warden come through and listen to us and, hey, can we get a little extra time here? Could we maybe have the cells painted? Hey, the doors aren't working. Could you fix them? Just makes life just that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing to us, but to somebody who has absolutely no freedom, I mean, you are told when you're going to wake up. You're told when you're going to move. You're told when you're going to eat. You're told when you can make a phone call. Yeah. Having your cell painted with fresh paint is a big deal.
Right.
But if we take a look at even just the cost itself that goes into the death penalty, I mean, one, we want to make sure that they actually did the crime.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're looking at, I think it was $35,000. And they're talking about the cocktail.
To kill someone?
You don't want any undue suffering. I mean, that's actually in the Constitution. No undue suffering. I mean, thank God we're not using the electric chair anymore.
I mean, but is it cheaper? You know?
Yeah.
Like, 35.
Well, I mean, it's like the Green Mile.
Yeah.
I mean, how they did that one. I mean, that was,
oh God.
that was cruel
John
and
Coffey
unusual.
is my hero.
Yeah.
But, maybe we should consult some of these people on death row for a cheaper way to kill people. Because that seems like a bit
there was
much.
there was one guy, he actually, I think it was Utah, he elected for the firing squad.
Hell yeah.
I mean, he had a choice and he chose firing squad. And
it probably doesn't hurt.
I don't think they have anybody actually aim anymore. I think all the guns are mounted. I think. I could be wrong. Somebody fact check me and include it in the comments. But I think they're mounted. But what, 35 cents compared to 30,000?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's what I'm saying. That's a bit much.
But actually, I don't know why it costs so much, because the main ingredient is sodium pentothal. That's the same ingredient that they use for general anesthetic when you go in for surgery. And the reason that anybody who's had surgery and you go in, they take your height, they take your weight and everything, that's so that they know how much sodium pentothal to give you. Because if it's too much, anesthesiologists, they call it a hot shot. They give you too much, and that hot shot will kill you on the operating table. So really all they need is the one ingredient. The other two are just redundant assurances that you're not going to wake up later. But I mean, it doesn't cost $30,000 for the anesthesiologist. So why is it costing $30,000 to put somebody on a table that they're not going to wake up from?
I don't know, man. Like, I feel like the death penalty in that way, the needle, I think that's a bit torturous. Because don't you have to stop? You feel yourself stop breathing?
No. I've had like the last surgery I had was under a year ago. It's to my shoulder, and they came in. They gave me sodium pentothal, and I'm sitting there. I'm carrying on a conversation, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up 4 hours later.
Okay, so you don't
Yeah, I mean, it's just like you just kind of get. I can't even say I got drowsy. It was just like I was just out. I mean, I was carrying on a conversation. Here it is 4 hours later, terrifying. And I've got this big bandage on my shoulder.
That's terrifying.
I mean, it happens that quick. So actually, I wouldn't even know that I was dead. I mean, I was just like, had a conversation 1 minute, and 4 hours later, I'm waking back up.
Right. You just kind of wake up in heaven or hell, I guess. If you're getting the death penalty, there's a good chance you're not going to heaven. Yeah. But who knows, I don't know, man. Like you said, cost wise, to me, that's a bit $35,000 to kill somebody.
And I'm just guessing on that. That was the last figure I remember.
That's overkill. I mean, but it's cheaper than housing them for 20 years.
Yeah, I think the average, when they figured it out, and these figures they're a couple years old. I'm not sure how often they update them. But the last figure that I saw was about $53,000 per year. Now, every state is different. I think California and New York were some of the most expensive at over $100,000 per year per inmate. So you figure you have one prison holds 1,200 people at over $100,000 a day average. That's your tax money. I mean, if you want your taxes to go down, stop putting so many people in prison for life. I mean, I understand 3 strikes, you're out because the person is not learning, and you give them a warning. Hey, stop putting your hand in the cookie jar. And then they do it again, and you give them another chance, and they do it again. And then you're like, okay, no more cookies for you. I mean, come on. $53,000 a year average.
Yeah, that's the average. I'm looking it up right now, and that is basically anywhere from 31,000 to 60,000.
And most prisons hold, on average, about 1,200 to 5,000 people.
That's insane, because I mean, I'm not even thinking about the amount of money. What I think about is, okay, you're being housed for life. That means that for the rest of your life, you don't have to figure out where you're eating, where you're sleeping, where your laundry's coming from.
And really, the only prisoners that they're charging are the trustees. And you have to kind of be a good boy, good girl in order to be a trustee. And you might make 80 cents a day. Maybe. The rest of the money that you did earn, say it was $1.20 and you're getting 80 cents of that, the rest of the money is going in to offset whatever program you're working on. And if there's any additional money from that program that's going to support the facility itself, making sure it's not falling down around you.
Okay, so still, it just seems like
You still have to be a trustee, and you still have to have a program. And a lot of state facilities and a lot of federal facilities are getting away from those programs because it is not cost effective, and quite frankly, they're having problems trying to hire people in order to support those programs, because instead of having them in the housing areas, they're somewhere else
right.
monitoring the inmates.
Yeah, so I mean, 20 years in prison for the rest of your life, you're essentially taken care of by the taxpayers. To me, that doesn't, it seems like, okay, yeah, I know prison's rough and prison's awful and everything, but for the next 20 years, I have no idea what's happening for me.
Yeah. All you know is that
are they really being punished?
in a way, yes, but in another way, no. I mean, because we look at it like this, according to the federal standard guidelines, the only thing that a prison is required to have as far as recreational items is a baseball, just one, a baseball bat, one, and one mitt. That's it. Or I think a frisbee. So, but everything else, the weights, the cable TV, the microwaves,
Fucking TV, man.
Yeah. I mean, all this stuff, all this additional stuff, the radios, I mean, just all this additional stuff it's pretty much there to keep them quiet.
Right.
Otherwise they will go absolutely apeshit. And I don't know if you've ever, I mean, take a prison tour.
No,
if any of you are curious about this, and it doesn't have to be a prison tour, contact your local police agency and ask them if you can tour the lockup facility. More than likely, they'll be happy to show you around. I mean, one, it gives them something to do, and two, you can spread the word. Hey, don't do bad things. This is where you go.
Right. This is where you go. You're gonna go.
Yeah.
I think as far as the death penalty is concerned, you said like when you said the cost, it does sound like a lot, but when I weigh it against taking care of a fucking murderer for the rest of my life, via tax money, I would much rather. And I know there's an argument about they're people. A life does not take a life, but at the same time, like, if you make the depraved decision to, murder someone in cold blood, at what point do we stop looking at you like a human? Because if you're able to do that, what's going to stop you in prison?
Absolutely nothing.
If anything.
Just take a look at videos online with prison riots. How does the riot start? Because you have gangs in prison, and they proliferated. They actually came up with a new term for that. They called it gang franchising, because they had a problem. So they started transferring inmates from one facility to another facility in another state. That person got there and they started the gang there. And then now you've got gangs that actually formed out of prison that are now within the local communities, because some people get out 20 years.
Yeah.
They get out. What do? They bring that mentality and that gang life with them, and now we've got gang problems. Darn, where was I going with this? What was your question before I went off on that tangent?
My question was basically, what is to stop them from killing people in prison?
Well, with that gang lifestyle, this guy does something to this guy, so this guy is now ordered by his gang to kill that guy. So all they do is they wait to get on the yard. Watch one of those videos. There are gangs where they got out on the yard. You've got 2, 3, 4, 800 people on a single yard walking around freely. And you've got 20 guards? I mean, it's heavily outweighed. They start stabbing up on each other. There's nothing stopping him. He's killed once before. He's proven that. That's why he's in jail. So and he's like, I'm in here for life anyways. What are they going to do? Put me in prison? What else are you going to do? So he's going to catch another 20 years. It doesn't, at that point in time, and it makes no sense to us. I don't want to spend another 20 years.
Yeah, you're going to give him 20 years on top of his 40 years. So he's got 60 years now. Meanwhile, he's already 35, so he wouldn't have gotten out till he was 70 anyway. Like, he's just going to keep killing and keep doing shit because why? He has nothing else to do.
I mean, you can watch documentaries. There are guys in there that, like, yes, I've killed in prison. What are you going to do? put me in prison. I'm already here.
Hello.
I mean, what are you going to do? Give me the death penalty? You've already given me one. I mean, that's the mentality. There's nothing going to stop them. The only thing that's going to stop them is their own conscience. That's it.
Which they probably don't have if they're in jail for murdering a bunch of people.
Some of them, if they don't carry it out, because that's what their gang says they're going to do,
right?
Their gang is going to kill them.
Now, this is not to say every person who kills someone deserves to be deserves life taken. Because, like I said, the woman Amber Geiger,
no,
she's an idiot. She's not like a murderer. There's a difference. There's people who've killed, in self-defense who still have to do some time. I remember this one case I saw where this lady like burned this pedophile alive for trying to rape her daughter. I personally don't understand why she went to jail, but I understand that there's a law involved to where, yeah, okay, she's got to do some time.
Yeah, society has, the voters have passed it that, yeah, that's not okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about depraved indifference. Like this person had zero reason to kill these people, and yet they were just bored, or they were wondering what it was like to kill somebody, and they're capable of killing, and they don't give a shit. That is, to me, where the death penalty comes into play.
On my other website, and this podcast has nothing to do with it, so I'm going to leave it out. But I did a paper on gangs, and there are people as young as 15 years old that Time Magazine interviewed, and they said, yeah, I'm a member of this gang, but I don't consider myself a full member because I don't have any blood. I mean, so they are waiting to go out and shoot somebody, not necessarily kill them, but shoot them, because they have to prove that they are a full member of the gang and their warped sense of how the gang is going to view them.
That's insane.
Yes, it is. I don't get it, but I didn't grow up in that environment, so the most I can do is kind of try to understand it, but I can't. I can't.
Yeah, there's reasons why people grow up, join gangs and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it comes to a point where you say, you know what? There are plenty of people in the world, and this is a great example. There are plenty of people in this world who grow up in that environment, even join gangs, and then they go to prison and they say, you know what? I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah, there are reform gang members.
Life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And there's actually some really good YouTubers out there. There's one, I love his show. It's called the After Prison Show. His story is he's been locked up several times. He never murdered anybody. He was in for primarily drug convictions. But the last one where he spent 7 years, he got caught with drugs and a weapon. So he was a felon in possession of a firearm, which is a no-no.
Right.
He did 7 years. He got out. He's completely changed his life. Totally changed his life. I don't know when he made that decision. According from what I can make from it, he just made the decision that I'm not coming back here anymore. Now he's on YouTube. He's earning a living, and he's a productive member of society, helping other guys who get out of prison try to not fall back into what they were doing, so that they don't go back. And I commend him for it.
Absolutely.
And that just goes with the other point, is that if you have somebody who's on death row and you have them sitting there for 10, 20, 15 years waiting for the appeal processes and everything else, and you're putting them to death, let's just say 10 years later, that's not the same person.
Right.
I mean, they have grown, they have changed because they're no longer in that environment that they came from, just interacting with other people. They do change.
And people do change. It's not fair to say people don't change. And you're right. If you put someone to death, that, those couple years later, it's not the same person, and it's going to be hard for them. It's going to be hard for you as a human being to want to put that person to death, because you spend, not for nothing, but those guards spend 20 years with those people. You spend 20 years with someone, and this is like personal, private, one-on-one time also, because remember, they're guarded by prison, they're guarded. And what can you do? But you figure they're spending 20 years with this
12
person,
hours
day in and day
12
out.
to 18
they're
hours a day.
seeing them evolve.
Yeah.
You're seeing this person evolve. You're seeing that shit happen. And when they die, it's like the Green Mile. When John Coffey died, there was like a lot of tears and shit.
You do start to know these people,
right? You become friends with these people, and it's inappropriate, maybe, if that's what some people want to call it, but it's real life.
And there was a case
realistically
many years ago in Texas where not just the guards but the warden themselves appealed to the governor not to carry out a sentence, because the person that was being put to death, they actually they're like, this is not the same person. She is actually helping people out. She is changing people's lives. She's changed my life. The person that we're putting to death is not the person that carried out the crime.
Right. And even if, I guess, in a sense, if you want to be technical, they are the person that carried out the crime. There, you have all these people willing to vouch for them. Clearly they've learned. They've learned. They're growing. They're older. They're wiser. They're less, murderous.
Well, look at how different we are from when we were 18.
Right. Oh God.
Yeah, I mean, we're completely different people. I mean, even if you go back and you look at the victim impact, look at people who, let's say it was a family member that this person had killed, and then the family, the residual victims, if you will, yeah, we're happy he's no longer here, this person's no longer here, but we really don't feel any different. There's other people that said, how'd they put it? That they actually didn't want them to be put to death.
Because it might not solve
we've taken a person off this planet, but I mean, that's what prison is for, to remove a person from society who is a danger to society. That's what prisons were designed for.
Right. This question is basically asking, if we eliminate the death penalty, will we start to see life in prison as a softer charge? And I don't think that's necessarily the case, because...
No, we're going to run into prison overcrowding is what we're going to do.
Right. And I think we see the death penalty. It's very rare that we call for death.
Yeah. I mean, it really has to be something rather heinous.
Awful.
If you wanted to look at it another way, we catch somebody who is 50 years old and we give them a 30-year sentence. That's a death sentence. Even if it's just a bunch of smaller sentences, just 10 years, 10 years, 10 years, that's still 30 years. Now, the differentiating factor is it going to be consecutive or is it going to be concurrent?
No, what I do think would be cool is we gave people the option of the death penalty. Because think about it. If you're facing 40 years in prison.
50 years?
Yeah, 50 years or 35. Do you want to die now or you want to die in 35 years? Personally, I think people would choose the death penalty. I think if we gave them, you give them the option, I mean.
Some of them would.
Yeah.
Especially if they've already served time. I mean, if they've done 5 years in prison, whether it's at a local county prison or if it's up at a state or federal level, if they've already done 5 years, they know what that environment's like. I mean, how many people actually look at death by cop than going back to prison?
That's true.
That's a real thing. I mean, there are people, they will do suicide by cop instead of going back to prison. And it's a terrible way that's the last thing any cop wants to do, is have somebody wanting you to shoot them.
Right.
Yeah, some of them, they will probably choose, I'll take the death penalty because I'm not going back.
I'm not going back. That's it. I'm not going back. And it's that kind of thing. I think that's the way we should do it in this society we live in. We do plea deals all the time. You want to plead guilty. If you take the deal, this happens. You take this deal, you die.
When I went to, when I was in college, my first round with college, that's something I actually studied was law enforcement. And I would never do a plea deal. I mean, a plea deal, you're actually saying, yes, I'm guilty. But they're going to give you the choice. You can do a plea, you can do 4 years, or you can go before a jury and you can look at 20. Well, there's still option 3, not guilty. Especially if it's your first time up. Hell no, I'm not taking a plea. Screw that. We're going to trial, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of, or if we eradicate the death penalty, will it make people softer? No, I think if anything, it'll frustrate the shit out of people. And I don't think this country will ever get rid of the death penalty.
No, I mean, it's disappeared, it's come back, it's disappeared, it's come back. I mean, it always comes back.
Someone always does something worthy of death.
Yeah, they blow up a building or they shoot into a crowd. Yeah, eventually it'll get to the point where they're like, we've had enough of this. We're going to start killing the killers. The only thing, if we got rid of it, the only thing it's going to do, we're already yelling and screaming about prison overcrowding and trying to figure out how to lessen it. First, we came out with mandatory minimums, and everybody was like, yay, mandatory minimums. And now now we need bigger facilities, but you're not building them here. Yeah. And prisons that were designed for 1,200 people are now housing 2,000 people. And all that's doing is causing more stress, not just on the inmates themselves, but also on the guards. It's causing more stress and more strain on the budgets. So they're starting to cut things, which pisses the inmates off, which gets the guards tensed up every time they walk in. So they're quitting. So now they have a problem hiring people because nobody wants to work there. I mean, it's a vicious circle, and that's what's going to happen. You get rid of the death penalty.
Yeah.
And with that, we are out of time. Let us know if we answered the question. Did we cover the question in depth enough? Was there something you expected to hear but didn't? Subscribe and leave us a comment. Visit the girlsaskguyshow.com website and let us know what's on your mind. Again, we thank you for listening, and we really do appreciate you taking your time with us. I'm here to give opinions on guys.
And I'm here to give opinions on girls.
Now go out there and be the star you were meant to be. Live life on your terms. And when we meet up again, we will all learn how to master this thing called life together. This has been a production of the Girls Ask Guys Show. Visit us over at the girlsaskguyshow.com website and subscribe to the show and to our newsletter. You can also submit your questions and request to be a guest on the show. Please subscribe, rate the show, and leave us honest feedback to let us know how we are doing. We really appreciate everyone listening, and we will talk to you on the next one.